President Donald Trump's recent confrontations with Panama over alleged Chinese influence in the Panama Canal, juxtaposed with his own complex relationship with China, highlights the irony of Trump's demands for global reduction in dependence on Chinese investments, while the U.S. itself remains deeply intertwined with Chinese capital. President Trump's bold stance against Panama's alleged dalliance with China comes at a time when his own top diplomat, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is in Panama with the presidential message. But is this a case of the pot calling the kettle black? Or in this case, red? You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan.
We're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China. That was given to Panama foolishly. But they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen. I don't think troops will be necessary in Panama. What Panama has done is terrible for national security for this part of the world. And, you know, 70% of the signage on the Panama Canal was written in Chinese. That's not right. So it wasn't meant for China. It should have never been made. The deal was a ridiculous deal. We lost 38,000 people building the Panama Canal, one of the great wonders of the world. 38, think of it, 38. It was the most expensive project ever built by this country, if you take it forward. The most expensive project ever built. We lost 38,000, and what happens? China owns it all of a sudden? It's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen. We have national security concerns, and they wouldn't let it happen either.
Strong words from the president asserting that China has its grip on the Panama Canal. But here's the twist. Panama firmly denies any Chinese control over the canal.
Yo diría que los temas más importantes tratados fueron los inherentes a el Tratado del Canal en función de lo que ha mencionado el presidente Trump de la presencia china. En este sentido, hice las voces de descargo, abriendo, por supuesto, las consideraciones para que el equipo técnico del canal con el que Estados Unidos designe conversen al respecto y puedan aclarar todas las dudas que puedan seguir teniendo al respecto. Igualmente, abordamos con mucha explicación el tema de los puertos chinos en el canal, explicándole que por primera vez en la historia de esa concesión, desde el 1997 a la fecha, tales dos puertos pertenecientes a una misma empresa son auditados por las autoridades correspondientes de la República de Panamá y que, como corresponde, tenemos que esperar a que ese audito termine para sacar nuestras propias conclusiones legales y actuar en concordancia.
So if Panama says there's no Chinese control, what's fueling this fiery rhetoric? An anti-China Trump cabinet might be happy to carry the message from President Trump, reduce Chinese influence around the canal, or face possible U.S. action.
We welcome the Chinese Communist Party into the global order, and they took advantage of all of its benefits, and they ignored all of its obligations and responsibilities. Instead, they have repressed and lied and cheated and hacked and stolen their way into global superpower status, and they have done so at our expense and at the expense of the people of their own country.
But here's where things get interesting. While the administration is pressuring Panama to distance itself from China, President Trump has been sending mixed signals. Despite his tough talk, Trump has shown a willingness to engage with China. He invited President Xi Jinping to his inauguration, although that invitation was declined, and then expressed interest in reviving trade talks. In fact, in the recent tariff war, while Washington has slapped 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada separately, for China it has been only 10%, which also has seen a fierce pushback from Beijing.
NBC, I just want to have you to know if you have a latest comment on the Panama Canal issue. President Trump warned of the danger of China taking control of the canal, and he would like to take it back from Panama. Do you have any comment on that? Thank you.
我们认同巴拿马总统穆利诺所说，巴拿马的主权和独立不容商讨，运河不受任何大国直接或间接控制。中方没有参与运河的管理运营，从不插手运河事务，一贯尊重巴拿马对运河的主权，承认运河为永久中立的国际通行水道。
And let's not forget, China is proposing to restore the 2020 Phase 1 trade deal, aiming to increase purchases of American goods and services. Meanwhile, China has also been investing heavily around the globe, including in the United States of America. From infrastructure projects to significant holdings in U.S. Treasury bonds, the financial ties run deep. So while the president urges other nations to reduce their dependence on Chinese investments, the U.S. itself remains significantly intertwined with Chinese capital. A noble sentiment, but easier said than done when China holds a substantial amount of U.S. debt and has invested billions in American infrastructure. What are China's U.S. Treasury holdings? As of November 2024, China held $768.6 billion in U.S. Treasury securities, making it the second largest foreign holder after Japan, which held $1.1 trillion. This represents a decline from its peak of over $1.3 trillion in the year 2016. Now let's talk about Panama Canal itself, a 51-mile engineering marvel connecting the Atlantic and Pacific was completed in the year 1914 after a failed French attempt. But the canal story is also one of American imperialism. In the year 1903, then-President Theodore Roosevelt backed a coup that gave Panama its independence from Colombia. And what a coincidence! Also handed the US full control of the canal zone. Washington ran the waterway like a colonial fiefdom, while Panama collected what many saw as chump change in exchange for their land being sliced in two. Fast forward to 1977, and President Jimmy Carter signed a treaty to hand the canal back to Panama because fairness, not force, should guide America's foreign policy. Novel idea. By the time the handover was complete in 1999, Panama finally had full control over the canal. But some in Washington never quite got over losing their big ditch. President Donald Trump is one such person who now claims that China has somehow taken over this vital waterway. But here's the thing, Panama runs the canal, not China, not the US, just Panama. Speaking of the two Western and Eastern powers, the reality is that the US and China are economically interdependent. Disentangling these investments is a complex and potentially disruptive endeavor. While it is a commendable goal, until the US addresses its own economic ties with China, urging other nations to do the same might just invite jibes such as, "Don't just talk the talk." Thank you for watching Statecraft.